The great council chamber of Prime had stood for 10,000 years. Its walls were made of black stone that absorbed light, and its ceiling rose so high that clouds sometimes formed beneath it. On this day, the 17 members of the High Council sat in their floating chairs, arranged in a perfect circle. At the center stood High Counselor, the most powerful being in an empire that stretched across 300 star systems. "The humans occupy 17 worlds," War Commander said, his deep voice echoing through the chamber. 17 small worlds in a region we have long ignored, but that region contains valuable minerals. I propose we take it. Counselor nodded slowly. He was old by standards, nearly 400 years, and his skin had darkened to almost black. His eyes, yellow and sharp, studied the holographic map floating before them. The human territories were marked in blue, a tiny spot compared to the red vastness of the empire. "What do we know of these humans?" asked. "Very little of importance," replied. He waved his hand and the display changed to show images of human beings. "They are small, fragile. They live for less than a century. They have no natural weapons, no claws, no armored skin. Their technology is inferior to ours by at least 200 years. And their military. Laughable, perhaps 50 warships in total. We have 12,000. Soft laughter rippled through the council. Ambassador, the youngest member, did not laugh. He had spent time among humans, learned their languages, studied their history. Something about them made him uneasy, though he could not explain what. "I see no reason to delay," Counselor said. "We will send a fleet to their nearest colony world and demonstrate our power. They will surrender their territories, and we will add another species to our empire. It has happened 100 times before." The council members began to vote, each raising their hand in agreement. Hesitated, then slowly raised his own. He told himself he was being foolish. Humans were weak. Everyone said so. The doors of the council chamber suddenly opened with a sound like thunder. Every counselor turned to look. No one entered the High Council chamber without permission. No one had done so in 300 years. Yet there she stood in the doorway, a figure that made even War Commander fall silent. Oracle was ancient. No one knew exactly how old, but some said she had been alive when the first ships left there. Her body was bent and thin, wrapped in white robes that seemed to glow with their own light. Her eyes were completely white without pupils, yet somehow they saw everything. "Oracle," Counselor said, trying to hide his surprise. "You honor us with your presence. But this is a military matter, not a spiritual one." Walked forward slowly, her bare feet making no sound on the stone floor. The counselors watched in uncomfortable silence. Oracles were respected, even feared, but they did not interfere in politics. They spoke only when the gods demanded it. "I have seen what you plan to do," said. Her voice was soft but somehow filled the entire chamber. "I have seen the blood that will follow." "Whose blood?" asked with a mocking smile. "Human blood." Turned her white eyes toward him, felt suddenly cold. "Yours," she said, "and the blood of millions of our people." The chamber fell silent. Counselor stepped forward, his expression troubled. "Oracle, explain yourself. We plan to attack a weak species with inferior technology. They cannot possibly threaten us." Closed her eyes. When she spoke again, her voice seemed to come from somewhere far away. "If you strike first against the humans, they will never stop. Not when their cities burn. Not when their children die. They will build new ships from the ashes of the old. They will teach their children to hate you before they teach them to walk. They will cross the stars with nothing but rage and memory, and they will not stop until every world is ash." She opened her eyes and looked directly at. "Do not wake them. Let them live in peace. They do not want war, but if you bring war to them, they will become war itself." For a long moment no one spoke, then laughed. "This is madness," he said. "I have seen humans. I have watched their broadcasts, studied their culture. They are soft. They care more about comfort than conquest. They could not threaten a child, let alone our empire." Several counselors nodded in agreement. The fear that had gripped them began to fade. Was old, after all. Perhaps her visions had become confused. Oracle said carefully, "We thank you for your warning, but we have made our decision. The humans will submit or be destroyed. It is the way of things." Looked at him for a long time, then she nodded slowly. "Then you have chosen," she said. "Remember this moment, counselor. When your cities burn, when your children cry out for parents who will never come home, remember that you were warned." She turned and walked toward the door. Ambassador rose from his seat. "Wait," he called out. "Oracle, please tell us more. How can we avoid this future?" Paused at the doorway, she did not turn around. "You cannot," she said. "The moment you chose to attack, the future became fixed. I came here only so that when the end comes, you will know why." She walked through the doors and was gone. The council sat in silence for several minutes, then clapped his hands together. "Well, that was dramatic. Shall we continue with the vote?" One by one, the councilors raised their hands. The attack was approved. War Commander would lead a fleet of 200 ships to the human colony called New Montana. They would burn it as a warning, then demand the surrender of all human territories. That night, Oracle stood on the balcony of her temple, watching the stars. Somewhere out there, on a small blue world, humans were living their lives without knowing what was coming. Families were eating dinner together. Children were being put to bed with stories and songs. None of them knew that in 3 weeks they would be dead. A young priest approached her nervously. "Oracle, are you well? You have been standing here for hours." Did not answer for a long time. When she finally spoke, her voice was thick with grief. "I have lived for 2,000 years, she said. "I have seen empires rise and fall, but I have never seen a species like the humans. They are so small, so fragile, so short-lived, and yet there is something inside them, something that even the gods fear." "What is it, Oracle?" A single tear fell from her white eyes. "They remember," she whispered. "They never forget, and they never give up. Thinks he is about to conquer a weak species. He does not understand that he is about to wake a sleeping beast that will devour us all." She looked up at the stars one final time. "May the gods forgive us for what we have done." New Montana was a beautiful world. It had wide golden plains, snow-capped mountains, and rivers that sparkled in the sunlight. 40,000 people called it home, most of them farmers and their families. It was the kind of place where everyone knew their neighbors, where children played safely in the streets, and where the biggest worry was whether the harvest would be good. Commander Daniel Hayes had not visited in 3 years. His work on the USS Valor kept him busy, always traveling from one star system to another. But when his sister Laura sent him a message saying that his nephew was turning 5, Daniel requested leave. Family was important to him. It was the reason he served in the first place. "Uncle Danny," little Peter screamed when Daniel stepped off the shuttle. The boy ran across the landing pad and jumped into his arms. Daniel caught him easily, laughing. "You got so big," Daniel said. "What is your mom feeding you?" Laura walked up behind her son, her husband beside her. She was smiling, but Daniel could see tears in her eyes. "It's been too long," she said, hugging him tightly. "Too long." "I know," Daniel said. "I'm sorry, but I'm here now." They spent 3 wonderful days together. Daniel played with Peter and his little sister Emma, who was only 2. He helped fix the fence around their farm. He sat on the porch with Laura, drinking coffee and watching the sunset. For the first time in years, he felt at peace. On the 4th morning, Daniel woke early. Something felt wrong. He could not explain it, just a cold feeling in his chest. He got dressed and walked outside. The sky was wrong. Instead of the soft pink of dawn, it glowed an angry orange. Daniel looked up and saw them. Ships. Hundreds of ships hanging in the sky like metal clouds. They were not human ships. The colony's emergency sirens began to wail. Daniel ran back into the house. Laura was already awake, fear in her eyes. "Get the children to the shelter," Daniel said, his military training taking over. "Now move." "Danny, what's happening?" "I don't know, just go." The first blast hit before they could reach the door. The plasma beam came from orbit, a pillar of blue-white fire that struck the center of the colony's main town. Daniel felt the ground shake. The windows shattered. Little Emma started screaming. "Go, go, go," Daniel shouted. They ran outside. The sky was full of plasma beams now, raining down like the judgment of angry gods. Buildings exploded. People ran and screamed. Daniel saw a family he recognized, the Hendersons, disappear in a flash of light. One moment they were there. The next they were ash. "The community shelter is 2 miles away," yelled over the chaos. "We'll never make it." "There's a storm cellar at the old Miller farm," Laura said. "It's closer." They ran. Daniel carried Emma in his arms. Laura held Peter's hand, practically dragging him along, led the way, dodging burning debris and fallen power lines. They were almost there when the beam hit. Daniel was thrown through the air. He slammed into something hard and everything went black. When he woke, the world was silent. That was the worst part. After all that noise, all that screaming, there was nothing but silence. He tried to move and found that he was buried under rubble. His left arm was broken. His head was bleeding, but he was alive. "Laura," he called out. His voice was a croak. "Peter." No answer. Daniel pushed against the rubble with his good arm. Slowly, painfully, he pulled himself free. He stood up and looked around. There was nothing left. The Miller farm was gone. The fields were gone. Everything, as far as he could see, was burned and broken. The golden plains of New Montana had become a wasteland. "Laura," he screamed. "Laura." He found them 20 meters away. They had almost made it to the cellar. The entrance was right there, just a few steps away. But the blast had been too close. Lay on his back, his eyes staring at nothing. Laura was next to him, her body curled around Peter and Emma, trying to protect them until the very end. It had not been enough. Daniel fell to his knees. He did not know how long he knelt there. It might have been minutes or hours. At some point he heard footsteps approaching. He did not look up. "Commander Hayes." The voice belonged to Sergeant Torres, one of his Marines. Torres was covered in dust and blood, but he was alive. "Sir, we need to move. There might be more strikes coming." Daniel did not respond. Torres knelt beside him and looked at the bodies. He understood immediately. He had seen that same look on the faces of soldiers who had lost everything. "I'm sorry, sir, I'm so sorry." "How many?" Daniel asked. His voice did not sound like his own. "We don't know yet, the whole colony," Torres trailed off. "It's bad, sir, it's really bad." "How many survivors?" Torres was quiet for a long moment. "Maybe 300, out of 40,000. Daniel stood up slowly. His legs felt like they belonged to someone else. He looked down at his sister one last time, at her children who would never grow up, at who had just started teaching Peter to ride a bicycle. "Who did this?" "We don't know yet. The ships are gone now. But they broadcast a message, said they were the Empire, said we should leave this region of space or face the same fate." Daniel bent down and picked something up from the ashes. It was a stuffed bear, burned and torn. It had been Peter's favorite toy. The boy had slept with it every night since he was born. "Sir," Torres said carefully, "what are your orders?" Daniel held the bear gently like it was the most precious thing in the universe. When he looked up, Torres felt a chill run down his spine. The commander's eyes had changed. The warmth was gone. In its place was something cold and hard and terrible. "Get me a shuttle," Daniel said. "We're going back to Earth." And then Daniel looked at the ruins of New Montana one last time. He thought about his sister's smile. He thought about Peter's laughter. He thought about Emma taking her first steps just 6 months ago. "And then we're going to build ships," he said quietly. "Lots of ships." He walked toward the emergency landing zone, still holding the burned stuffed bear. Tours followed in silence. Behind them, the ashes of 40,000 innocent people drifted slowly in the wind. Somewhere far across the galaxy, Oracle sat in her temple and wept. She had seen this moment in her visions 1,000 times, but seeing it come true was worse than she had imagined. The had struck first, just as she knew they would. And now the humans would never stop. Just as she knew they would, 5 years passed. The galaxy expected humanity to accept defeat. It was the logical thing to do. The Empire had 12,000 warships. Humanity had less than 50. Every species that had ever faced had done the same thing. They surrendered, paid tribute, and accepted their place as servants of the Empire. It was painful, but it was survival. They expected humans to do the same. When no surrender came after the first month, they assumed the humans were simply slow to respond. When no surrender came after the first year, they began to feel confused. When no surrender came after 5 years, they began to feel something they had not felt in centuries. Fear. Earth had gone quiet. Human ships no longer traveled through open space. Their colonies went dark, sending no signals, receiving no visitors. They sent spy ships to observe human worlds, but they found nothing unusual. Just ordinary people living ordinary lives. No military buildup. No preparation for war. And yet the silence felt wrong. It felt like the moment before a storm, when the air grows heavy and the animals hide. High Counselor could not sleep well anymore. He kept remembering the Oracle's words, even though he told himself they were nonsense. On Earth, in a facility buried deep beneath a mountain, Admiral Grant stood before a wall of screens showing the largest military buildup in human history. "How many ships today?" she asked. "We finished number 942 this morning," her aide replied. "Another 300 are in various stages of completion." Nodded. 942 warships built in secret over 5 years. Each one was a masterpiece of engineering designed with only one purpose: to kill. Dr. Cole, the head of the science division, had spent the 5 years studying captured technology and finding every possible weakness. Human ships were now faster, tougher, and deadlier than anything the Empire had ever faced. And the crews, fully trained and ready, every single one of them volunteered. That was the part that amazed the most. When the call had gone out for soldiers, for pilots, for engineers, the response had been overwhelming. Young people fresh out of school, old veterans who had retired decades ago, mothers and fathers who left their families behind. They all said the same thing when asked why they were joining. New Montana. 2 words that meant everything now. 2 words that every human child learned before they could read. 2 words carved into the walls of every military facility, every government building, every school. New Montana. Remember New Montana. In his private quarters aboard the newly built USS Valor, Captain Daniel Hayes studied battle maps. He had not taken a day of rest in 5 years. He had not visited his parents who had lost their daughter and their. He had not allowed himself to grieve properly because grief would slow him down, and he could not afford to be slow. Lieutenant Moore, his tactical officer, entered the room. She was young, barely 30, but she had a brilliant mind for strategy. She had spent the last 5 years developing new combat tactics specifically designed to exploit weaknesses. "We're ready, sir," she said. "The fleet is assembled. 1,012 warships. Every single one is crewed by volunteers who know they might not come back." "They'll come back," Daniel said. "Most of them. We're not throwing their lives away." "I know, sir. That's what makes us different from them." Daniel was quiet for a moment. Then he asked, "What have they been doing while we prepared?" Nothing, mostly. They've been waiting for us to surrender. Their spy ships have watched us, but they didn't see what we were building. They still think we have 50 ships. They still think we're weak. Good, let them think that. Far across the galaxy on Prime, Ambassador stood before the High Council. He had spent 5 years gathering intelligence on humanity, and what he had found terrified him. They are not weak, he said, his voice shaking. They have been building, hiding, preparing. I don't know how many ships they have now, but I know it's more than we think. War Commander, who had led the attack on New Montana, laughed dismissively. You worry too much, Ambassador. Humans are soft. They care about their individual lives. They will not sacrifice themselves for something as abstract as revenge. You don't understand them, said. Their history is full of wars that lasted for generations. They have fought each other over insults spoken 100 years earlier. They carved the names of their dead into stone and taught their children to honor those names. They never forget. Enough, Counselor said. The humans have had 5 years to surrender and they have not. This means they are either too stupid to recognize their situation or too proud to accept it. Either way, we will crush them when they finally decide to fight. 1,000 ships against 12,000. The math is simple. A young messenger suddenly burst into the chamber, breaking all protocol. High Counselor, urgent report from the border. A human fleet has been spotted entering our territory. Frowned, how many ships? The messenger's face was pale. Over 1,000, High Counselor. They are heading for our core worlds. The council fell silent, closed his eyes. He had tried to warn them. They had not listened. Bring me the oracle, commanded. An hour later, stood before the council once again. She looked the same as she had 5 years ago, ancient and fragile, but her white eyes seemed to glow with knowledge. Oracle said, tell us what you see. Tell us how to defeat the humans. Was quiet for a long moment. Then she spoke. It is already too late, she said. I warned you 5 years ago. You did not listen. Now the future is fixed. The humans are coming and they will not stop until they have their justice. There must be something we can do. Shook her head slowly. You killed their children, she said. You burned their homes. You did it because you thought they were weak, because you thought they would forget. But humans do not forget. They carry their pain like a weapon. They pass it down to their children and their children's children. 100 years from now, humans will still remember New Montana. 1,000 years from now, they will still remember. She turned to leave, then paused at the door. You wanted to conquer a species, she said quietly. Instead, you woke up something that will haunt your descendants forever. The humans have a long memory, Counselor, and they are coming to share it with you. Across the galaxy, Captain Daniel Hayes stood on the bridge of the USS Valor. Around him, over 1,000 ships moved in perfect formation, the largest human fleet ever assembled. All ships report ready, sir, said. Daniel looked at the stuffed bear sitting on his command chair. He had carried it with him every day for 5 years. A reminder, a promise. Open a channel to all ships, he said. When the channel was open, he spoke. 5 years ago, they killed 40,000 innocent people because they thought we would surrender. They thought we would forget. They thought we were weak. He paused. They were wrong. Today, we teach them what it means to fight humanity. Today, we show them that we never forget. Remember New Montana. 1,000 voices answered him. Remember New Montana. The fleet jumped to hyperspace, carrying the memory of the dead toward space. The human fleet arrived at Prime, the largest border station, on a quiet morning. The station commander, a middle-aged named, had been expecting a peaceful day. He had been stationed at this post for 30 years and had never seen combat. When his sensors detected over 1,000 enemy warships dropping out of hyperspace, he thought the equipment was broken. Then the ships opened fire. The station's shields lasted exactly 47 seconds, immediately broadcast a surrender signal on all frequencies. He had a wife and children back on Prime. He wanted to live. To his great relief, the firing stopped. A voice came through the communication channel, speaking perfect. "This is Captain Daniel Hayes of the USS Valor. We accept your surrender. You have 1 hour to evacuate all personnel to your escape pods." Could not believe his luck. The humans were showing mercy. He ordered his crew to abandon the station immediately. Within 40 minutes, everyone was safely aboard an escape pod, drifting toward the nearest planet. Then the human fleet destroyed the station anyway. A second transmission came from the Valor. "New Montana." That was all it said, 2 words, but those 2 words spread across the Empire like wildfire. Every station, every colony, every military outpost heard about what had happened at Prime. The humans had accepted a surrender, then destroyed the target anyway. They were not fighting by the normal rules. They were fighting to send a message. War Commander assembled the main fleet at the nebula, a massive cloud of gas and dust that provided perfect cover for an ambush. He had 5,000 warships under his command, 5 times the size of the human fleet. The math was simple. The humans would attack, and he would crush them. They got lucky at Prime, he told his officers. The station was weak, the commander was a coward. But here they face the true might of the Empire. Here they will learn their place. His officers cheered. They had been raised on stories of superiority. They had conquered 100 species without ever facing a real challenge. They could not imagine losing. The human fleet arrived 3 days later. Daniel had studied the nebula carefully. He knew was using it as a trap, hiding his ships in the dust clouds. He also knew something did not. Human sensor technology had improved dramatically in the last 5 years. The ships might as well have been standing in open space. "I'm reading their positions," said. "They're spread out, trying to surround us when we enter the nebula." "Then we won't enter it," Daniel replied. "Fire long-range missiles at their fleet positions. Let's see how they react." 2,000 missiles streaked into the nebula. The ships had to move to avoid them, breaking their formation. Daniel watched the chaos on his screens and smiled grimly. "Now we enter," he said. "Attack pattern Delta. All ships target their command vessels first." The Battle of Nebula lasted 6 hours. They had numbers on their side, but the humans had something else, a fury that bordered on madness. Human ships did not retreat when damaged. Human pilots did not eject when their vessels were failing. They fought until they physically could not fight anymore, and then they tried to ram their enemies. Watched in growing horror as his fleet was torn apart. Every time he thought the humans were beaten, they came back harder. One human destroyer, its engines gone and its weapons nearly depleted, used its last power to crash into a battleship. The pilot's final transmission was 2 words: New Montana. "What is wrong with these creatures?" demanded. "Why won't they break?" "They're not fighting to win," one of his officers said quietly. "They're fighting to make us pay. Every ship we lose, every soldier we kill, it costs us something. And they don't care if they die as long as we die too." By the end of the battle, they had lost 60 warships. The humans had lost 12. It was a disaster unlike anything the Empire had experienced in 1,000 years. Retreated with his remaining forces, trying to understand what had gone wrong. He had fought dozens of species. All of them, when faced with overwhelming force, had either surrendered or fought cautiously to preserve their numbers. The humans did neither. They threw themselves into battle with complete disregard for their own lives. On the Valor, Sergeant Torres patched up a wound on his arm while watching the fleet run. He had fought on the ground, leading a boarding party onto a cruiser. His team had captured the ship and rescued its prisoner, Ambassador, who had been arrested for spreading fear and lies about human capabilities. Now sat in the Valor's conference room, surrounded by human officers. He had expected to be tortured, maybe executed. Instead, Captain Hayes had offered him coffee. "You're not what I expected," said carefully. What did you expect? Daniel asked. Monsters. After what we did to your colony, I thought you would kill every you found. I thought you would show no mercy. Daniel was quiet for a moment. Then he pulled out the burned stuffed bear and placed it on the table. My nephew was 5 years old, he said. His name was Peter. This was his favorite toy. I found it in the ashes of his home next to his body. Felt cold. I want justice, Daniel continued. I want the people who ordered the attack on New Montana to face consequences. I want the Empire to never threaten humanity again. But I don't want genocide. I don't want to become the thing I'm fighting against. Then, why did you destroy Prime after accepting the surrender? To send a message. Your people only understand strength. Mercy they see as weakness, so I showed them strength first. But I let the crew escape. I could have killed them. I chose not to. Thought about this for a long time. What do you want from me? He finally asked. Information, your fleet positions, your defense systems. Help us end this war quickly with as little death as possible on both sides. And if I help you, what happens to my family? They're still on Prime. Daniel leaned forward. When we win this war, and we will win, your family will be protected. You have my word. Studied the human's face. He saw pain there and anger, but also something else, something that looked almost like hope. I believe you, said slowly. I'll help you. Meanwhile, on Prime, Oracle visited High Counselor in his private chambers. The old leader looked tired and afraid. They destroyed 60 of our ships, he said, barely escaped with his life. How is this possible? Sat down across from him. I told you this would happen, she said gently. I told you they would never stop. Can we still win? The Oracle was silent for a long moment. Then she shook her head. No, she said, we cannot win. The best we can hope for now is survival. The humans are angry, but they are not evil. If you surrender, they may show mercy. Surrender to an inferior species. The Council would never accept it. Stood up and walked to the window. Outside, the sun was setting over the capital city, painting the sky in shades of red and gold. Then the Council will die, she said simply, and the Empire will fall. And in 100 years, scholars will study our civilization and wonder why we were so foolish, why we attacked a species we did not understand, why we ignored the warnings until it was too late. She turned to face. I have seen the future, Counselor. In every version, the humans win. The only question is how much of our people will be left when the war ends. That choice is still yours to make. She walked out, leaving alone with his thoughts and his fears. Far away, the human fleet regrouped and prepared for the next battle. They were coming for Prime. Nothing in the galaxy could stop them now. The human fleet hung in orbit above Prime like a crown of fire. 7 years had passed since the attack on New Montana. 7 years of war, of blood, of sacrifice. The Empire, which had once ruled 300 star systems, now controlled only there. Their fleets were destroyed. Their colonies had fallen one by one. War Commander had died at the Battle of the Azure Rift, his flagship torn apart by human missiles. He had refused to surrender until the very end, still believing that the Empire could somehow win. He was wrong. High Counselor stood in the council chamber, looking at the empty seats around him. Half the counselors were dead. The others had fled to distant worlds, hopping to escape the human advance. Only remained, too old and too tired to run. A communication signal came through, a human voice. This is Captain Daniel Hayes of the United Earth Fleet. We are prepared to discuss terms of surrender. You have 1 hour to respond. Closed his eyes. This was the moment he had feared for 7 years. The moment Oracle had predicted when she walked into this very chamber and warned them not to attack. He remembered her words perfectly. They will not stop until every world is ash. But the still stood. The cities were undamaged. The people were alive and afraid, but alive. Perhaps there was still hope. Tell them we accept, said to his aide. I will meet with their captain personally." An hour later, Daniel Hayes transported down to the council chamber with a small security team. He wore his military uniform, clean and pressed, with the symbol of the United Earth Fleet on his shoulder. On his belt hung a small bag containing a burned stuffed bear. Had expected a monster. What he saw was a tired man in his 40s, with hair at his temples and deep lines around his eyes. A man who had been fighting for 7 years and was ready for it to end. "Counselor," Daniel said, "we meet at last. Captain Hayes, I have heard much about you." "And I have heard much about you. You were the one who approved the attack on New Montana." Flinched but did not deny it. "Yes, I gave the order. If you wish to kill me, I will not resist." Daniel was quiet for a moment, then he shook his head. "I didn't come here to kill you. I came here to end the war." He pulled out a document and placed it on the council table, looked at it with confusion. "These are our terms," Daniel said. "War reparations to be paid over 50 years, strict limitations on your military. You will never have more than 100 warships, territory concessions in the border regions. War criminals will be identified and tried in a joint court." Read the document slowly. His hands were shaking. "This is remarkably fair," he said finally. "I expected much worse. I expected genocide." "You expected us to be like you." The words hung in the air, looked up at the human captain. "We attacked your colony. We killed 40,000 innocent people. We showed no mercy. Why are you showing mercy to us?" Daniel reached into his bag and pulled out the burned stuffed bear. He placed it on the table next to the surrender document. "This belonged to my nephew," he said. "His name was Peter. He was 5 years old when your fleet killed him. His mother, my sister, died trying to protect him. I found their bodies in the ashes of their home." Could not look at the bear. He stared at the floor. "For 7 years I have thought about that day," Daniel continued. "For 7 years I have dreamed about what I would do when I finally stood in this chamber. Sometimes in those dreams I burned your cities. I killed your children the way you killed mine. I made you feel every ounce of the pain that I felt." He paused. "But I am not that person. Humanity is not that species. We wanted justice, not extinction. We wanted you to know that attacking us has consequences. We wanted to make sure you never threaten us again, but we did not want to become monsters in the process." Looked up, his eyes wet with what might have been tears. "And if we violate these terms, if we rebuild our military and attack you again in 100 years?" Daniel's face hardened. "Then we will come back, and next time there will be no mercy. There will be no second chances. We will finish what you started." He leaned forward. "Do you understand me, counselor? This is your one opportunity, your only opportunity. Take it." Picked up a pen and signed the document. After the official ceremony, when the cameras were gone and the aides had left, Daniel found himself alone with Oracle. She had watched the surrender from a corner of the chamber, saying nothing. Now she approached him. "You are not what I expected," she said. Her white eyes seemed to look through him. "What did you expect?" "I saw 2 futures," she said. "In one, humanity became the very thing they fought against. They burned our worlds and killed our children. They proved that all species, given enough pain, become monsters." "And the other future?" "In the other future, humanity remembered who they were. They brought justice but not genocide. They won the war without losing their souls." Daniel thought about this. "Which future did we choose?" Smiled sadly. "Both," she said. "You burned our worlds, Captain. You destroyed our fleets and killed our soldiers. You brought war to species that had never harmed you simply because they were our allies. That is the monster inside you." She paused. "But you also spared our children. You accepted surrenders when you could have slaughtered. You offered terms when you could have demanded extinction. That is the human inside you." She reached out and touched his hand gently. You are a terrifying species, Captain Hayes. Terrifying because you can be both. Because you can burn half the galaxy and then stop, look at what you have done, and choose to be better. Daniel did not know what to say, so he said nothing. Go home, said. Go home and build something. Your sister would not want you to spend the rest of your life carrying that pain. Honor her memory by living, not by fighting. 1 month later, Daniel returned to New Montana. The colony was being rebuilt. New buildings rose where the old ones had stood. Farms were being planted. Children were playing in the streets again. The population was still small, only 10,000, but it was growing. Survivors had returned. New settlers had arrived. Life was continuing. Daniel walked to the center of the colony where a memorial had been built. It was a simple wall of black stone carved with 40,000 names. His sister's name was there, her husband's name, his nephew Peter, his niece Emma. He placed the burned stuffed bear at the base of the wall. Moore stood beside him. She had served with him through the entire war. She knew what he had lost and what it had cost him. Was it worth it? She asked. Daniel looked at the memorial for a long time. Then he looked at the children playing nearby. A little girl who reminded him of Emma. A little boy who laughed like Peter once did. Ask me in 50 years, he said. If we're still here, still free, still human, then yes, it was worth it. He turned and walked away from the memorial, leaving the stuffed bear where it lay. A promise kept, a debt paid, a war ended. Behind him, carved into the base of the memorial, were 6 words that would be remembered for 1,000 years. They struck first, we never stopped. The Oracle was right. She was always right.